Today, we are glad to have with us Geoff and Zoe Thatcher. Good to have you guys.
Hey, John.
How are you guys?
Good.
Yeah.
Very good.
We're great. Happy to be with you tonight.
Wonderful. Where are you guys tuning in from? Where are you coming from?
We're at our home in Bluffton, South Carolina, halfway between Savannah, where Zoe lives, and Hilton Head Island. So Zoe has been hunkering down with us during the pandemic because we have more bike trails and, and things like that. We're closer to the beach where we can go on walks. So she has decamped from her house in Savannah and is staying with us. And so we're here as a family in Bluffton, South Carolina.
Oh, that's great. So South Carolina. So we're going live on Meridian Magazine tonight to talk about this little beauty that just barely came out. Tell us a little bit about the CEO's Time Machine. I know that this was a labor of love and it was done relatively quickly. I'm amazed at how quickly it all came together. Tell us about all those fun facts.
Well, this book, The CEO's Time Machine, is for anybody who feels like they've had a really good idea and nobody was listening. And it started back in 2016. I was working on a project and just was thinking a lot about history and a lot about the future and how they relate to each other. And so I wrote a very short story called The CEO's Time Machine. And, I posted it on LinkedIn and like 5 people read it. And, maybe got like, 3 of those clicks were family members. So, it just kind of sat there. And I always felt like it would make a good book. And then, Zoe graduated from Auburn University in 2018. So she's been out for 2 years now. And she was in St. Louis designing costumes for 4 and 8-year-olds, ballet and tap. And she came down to Savannah and joined us at work in August. And in October, Zoe likes to do these things called Instagram challenges. So why don't you tell them about your Inktober?
So there's this Instagram challenge for artists called Inktober. Basically, every day of the month of October, you post an inked drawing. And I thought it was a great idea to challenge myself because it's very out of my comfort zone. I usually do very bright, colorful things. And to limit myself to just ink and kind of like a dark black and white, maybe a pop of color every now and then was a big challenge. So my lovely boss said I could use some work time to pursue that and post on my Instagram and his the company's Instagram. And on the 29th of October, I posted a picture of a girl wearing a red scarf. And it's basically the same art style that we used in the book. And he looked at me and said, "That's it. That's the style. That's the style that I want."
That's it. Yeah, absolutely. I saw that and I was like, Zoe, that would make the perfect style for this short story I wrote. Let's do it. And then, of course, reality hit and we just got busy. And, the problem with trying to do projects in your spare time is you never have any spare time. And so basically we just kind of didn't do anything with it at all. And then COVID-19 hit. And, the economy shuts down and, we have a small company and this is my only employee. And we looked at each other and we were like, what are we going to do? And so we decided, you know what, let's get this book published before the lockdown's over. And so that meant she had to do 43 illustrations.
Wow.
In less than 3 weeks. We had to find a publisher who would be willing to publish it quickly, which we did, thankfully. And then we had to find a graphic designer to do the typography and the layout for the cover and the layout for everything. And then an editor, a copy editor to help us edit everything together and then put it all up together. It was amazing. We got it done in 4 weeks and up on
Incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. Well, as you guys talk, actually, this came in the mail today. So I'll do a live unboxing.
All right.
Look at this.
There's no confetti in there. Like, it's
it's going to blow up on me, right?
Style, right?
No, I love the tape, though. That totally goes with the branding. And obviously, that's what you do for a living, right? At Creative
Ask her about the tape because she's the one who has to do the tape.
That's awesome. I love it. I love it.
It's a good personal touch, but you have to get it wet, and it's a whole process to get it on there. But it's worth it.
It's not as easy as we thought, and yes, I delegate that responsibility.
Yes. So. Well, hey, tell us a little bit about the book because it's about what, a 30-minute read?
Yeah, it's a short story. It's a business parable. And what you're seeing here is the opening scene in the book. And it's about a visionary CEO, kind of like an Elon Musk, Steve Jobs or John Dye type of executive who is passing over the reins of his company to his protege, who's a younger woman, and he has to teach her one more thing. Oh, there it goes.
There it is.
Drum roll, please. Right?
It's beautiful.
Thank you. It really is. It's a short story, but it's also an art book. And Zoe did an amazing job with the illustrations. And so he has to teach his protege one more thing before he turns over the reins of the company. And what you have to understand is that because this CEO is so visionary, everybody thinks he has a time machine. I mean, they joke about it, but they're kind of semi-serious about it. And he has this secret R&D garage that nobody gets to go into. And finally, she gets to go in this R&D garage. And she's wondering in her head the whole time, is there really a time machine in here? And the book is about him introducing her to his time machine.
Interesting. Now, talk a little bit about, has this been in your head for some time? Have you guys, obviously this was fortuitous timing because of, coronavirus, COVID-19, but has this been festering for some time? Have you guys been thinking through this? What's the story behind this and how did it come to fruition so quickly?
Well, I'm a writer, by education and by passion, and that's what I do. I mean, my job is as a creative director, and we collectively, what we work on is theme parks and museums and visitor centers and things like that. But, what was really cool about this project is to be able, I write a bunch of stuff all the time, and then it just sits there and nothing happens to it because we just get busy. And what was great about this project is to finally take something we've written and to take that and then have somebody realize the vision of it. Because, honestly, my wife, she's very supportive. Actually, the book is dedicated to her, our muse.
That's great.
Yeah, it's dedicated to our muse. And our muse is definitely her mom, my wife. And, Tanya, she said, she goes, yeah, the story's good. She goes, but it's the visuals, it's the illustrations that really bring it to life. And I couldn't agree more. Without Zoe, again, this would just be a short story I wrote that sat on my computer, maybe was on LinkedIn and 5 people read it. So,
I love that because, these are very reminiscent of kind of a woodblock style, I would say. Zoe, is that kind of the genre you'd put them in as well?
Yeah. Very. It's a digital. I did it digitally, but it definitely draws a lot of inspiration from the woodblock.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's just incredible the look, and I'll say this too. I think it's a very you don't realize 35 minutes have passed because there is an image on each spread.
Yeah,
it's just beautiful. It feels almost like a storybook, almost like a maybe I shouldn't say this, but it feels almost like a graphic comic, right?
That was the original inspiration. When he first kind of pitched this idea to me, he was like, I want it to be almost like a graphic novel. You want it to be that? And he was like, yeah. And I'm like, well, you realize that graphic novels are like all dialogue. And I had read it at that point, and I'm like, there's not a lot of dialogue. There is, but there's a lot of, I guess, prose or whatever.
She kept me straight.
I was like, we could do it, but there's a lot of descriptions, and I don't know if that's the best format, but we kind of found a happy medium, and it ended up working really well.
Now, one cool thing for your audience, John, might be that the inspiration for this, her original Inktober back in October, was a girl in a red scarf. And now, if you're a real nerdy, reader and genre of Latter-day Saint authors, you kind of know what that is. But Zoe's a very nerdy fan of Latter-day Saint fantasy authors. So why don't you tell them a little bit about where that came from?
So one of the things that Inktober does is it gives you prompts. So you have something to kind of juice your creative thinking and give you something to think about drawing every day. And so one of the prompts I was following was called Cosmere Inktober, which is the world of the author Brandon Sanderson. And so the picture that sparked all of this was actually drawn from one of his books. So if you're a nice fantasy...
Which book?
Words of Radiance of the Stormlight Archive.
Oh, that's
I
great.
promised to start on Wednesday, but it's like 61 hours of Audible for the first book. And so I'm
Oh,
like,
wow.
Not a 30-minute read. It's
I know.
epic.
This book, though, the CEO's Time Machine, 30 minutes, and you get a great story. There's lots of messages. And I think the most important message is really about, if you have a good idea and no one's listening to you, if you work in a job and you feel like you're not being listened to, this book is really for you. And it's meant to inspire and really help both leaders and people coming into the workplace to really understand the context of how important our past is and how our past shapes our future, and how important having a vision for the future is, but not thinking about the future, but actually going into the future and looking back into the past. And of course, here in the moment, it's about making decisions.
Absolutely.
Being decisive.
It's interesting you say that, because Bruce in the foreword says, 40 years ago, I set out on a mission to convince business leaders that history isn't just about the past. He says it's about transforming the future. And just like you said, that it's almost a continuum, right? What happened in the past influences us now, and what will happen in the future. So what gospel parallels might we pull from what you've written here?
Well, it's really interesting. You just talked about the past and the future. You go back to 1842, Joseph Smith, the telegraph was being invented. Mm-hmm. And what happens? He talks about the standard of truth, talks about the gospel, penetrating every continent. I'm probably gonna get the quote wrong, every clime, sounding in every ear, Yeah. How is that possible? I mean, that was a prophecy in 1842. And now we're on Facebook right now. And guess what? We're broadcasting right now live on Facebook, the countries where our missionaries are not allowed to go. So we can actually share messages. We can actually, through social media and the power of this amazing technology, by the way, which David O. McKay talked about, and Spencer W. Kimball talked about, and a 90-year-old Elder Tom Perry talked about, and Elder Bednar talked about. People have been talking about the power of this technology for a very long time. And so it's really amazing to understand how the past impacts our future. So anyway.
Absolutely. No, that's great. And the power of story too, as we've read through the Come Follow Me curriculum this year. I mean, that's what came to my mind as I thought about the history impacting the present, impacting the future. How many times did people talk about Moses and what he went through, and they turned to his story for strength, Nephi and his brothers in the cave, and later on, all the prophets as they think through things that have happened before. That's why the plates were so important, right? So again, this continuum of time, the importance of having the past impact the present and the future. So incredible. Yeah. Well, good. Well, where can we get this? I mean, it's brand new to book stands. It's probably on Amazon.
It is.
Yeah.
All right. So Amazon, we just search for the CEO's Time Machine, I'm assuming.
Right. We have a website, ceotimemachine.com. And so you can go to that website, and, there's also a link to Barnes & Noble. So if you want to buy it on Barnes & Noble, you can go there. There are other retail, Apple and some other places, but, obviously Amazon is the big one.
Yes.
And you can find more information on that website, ceotimemachine.com. And
CEO Time Machine.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Any plans? This is in digital format then as well. Is it on Kindle?
Yeah. There's a Kindle edition, and there's a hard copy edition. We're holding off on the soft copy because, I'm biased here, but I think it's a piece of art. I mean, her 43 illustrations that she did in 3 weeks during the, pandemic lockdown, it still just blows me away that she produced that volume of work. Another lesson here about young people, I'm old, gray hair, and, she's young, is, if I were to go out and say to somebody, hey, if I were to commission 43 illustrations from an experienced illustrator or designer, they would have told me 2 months, and it would have cost way more money than I had. Zoe was like, okay, I'll do 43 illustrations in 3 weeks. And so that's an amazing outlook that she has on life.
We did get very lucky though too, that we had a very similar vision for the book. So we didn't have to go through as many steps. So that sped up the process a lot too. But
Yeah.
I guess great minds think alike.
And look-alike.
And look alike.
That's right. That's great. Well, you guys, great job. Good job with this. Again, jump on Amazon. Go get the CEO's Time Machine. Thanks so much for being on.
Thank you, John.
Okay,
Appreciate
we'll see
it.
ya.
All right. See ya. Come see us time.